There you go. Okay. So I'd also like to mention, if you haven't, if you can't see it yourself on your screen, we have now added closed captioning for those with hearing challenges. If you can't see it yet, go to the bottom of your Zoom window and look for more, and you'll find, oh, what's it called again? I have to go to a different screen. It's, go to live transcript or show subtitle. And then you'll have it. And there are even settings to adjust the size of the text if you need to. So we're kind of excited about that. Now I'd like to begin tonight's event in the spirit of respect, reciprocity, and truth by honoring and acknowledging Mohkinstsis and the traditional Treaty 7 territory and oral practices of the Blackfoot Confederacy, including the Siksika, Kainai, Piikani, as well as the Yasi, Nakota, and Tsuut'ina nations. IR acknowledges that this territory is also cherished by the Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3 within the historical Northwest Métis homeland. We celebrate all nations, Indigenous and non, who honor this land. We are grateful to engage in an honest and eager process of reconciliation. We are all treaty people. So we're grateful to each of you for choosing to spend your evening with us. So thank you for being here. Our grant writing event this evening is a continuation of something of a tradition now, a resource that IR has offered for over a decade now. In the past couple of years, it has been modified a little and is now integrated into our ongoing series of IR events called Umbrella Talks. We now offer grant writing workshops or talks in February and August of each year. This is IR's second grant writing event of the summer of 2022. And tonight we will be featuring Taylor Poitras from Calgary Arts Development, Kari Mcqueen from Alberta Foundation for the Arts, and Chris Carson from CARFAC, Alberta. Now, just a little bit more about Elephant Artist Relief Society. Our primary purpose is, and has always been, to empower artists in Calgary, an area to survive and thrive as artists. And these umbrella talks are one element of what we offer. This year, IR celebrates 15 years of service to the local arts community. We started out supporting visual artists only in 2007. And starting in 2015, we shifted to start supporting artists of all disciplines in Calgary and area. Even though IR has grown and evolved over that time, our mission has remained the same: to provide practical resources that help sustain the livelihood and practice of artists in the Calgary area. To achieve this, IR offers monthly professional and personal development talks such as this one, as well as a twice monthly online artist meetup group on Facebook called Studio E, a wide variety of community resource information, which you can find on our website, elephantartistrelief.com. And of course, our core program of emergency financial relief for artists who find themselves in a crisis situation. As a charitable organization, IR relies on our funders for our operations, but also very much on volunteerism, membership, and fundraising, especially fundraising, to do much of what we do. Our emergency relief fund is composed entirely of donations and the money from fundraising initiatives. You can help us by raising awareness about IR, and if you can, consider donating online to help artists in crisis. Our heartfelt thanks goes out to all of those who have already gifted IR in the past. Since this society is 15 years old this year, we're encouraging our supporters to contribute a monthly donation of $15 to mark this anniversary. Every dollar donated is allocated to providing relief for artists in times of need. So Just a few last bits of housekeeping before we start. Throughout the presentation, we ask that you keep your mics on mute and your video off if possible. It reduces the use of bandwidth, of course, and also so there's minimal background interference. Please feel free to use the chat box to write your questions as they come up, and we will start a record of those for the Q&A portion of this evening. Tonight's presentations will last approximately 60 to 90 minutes. Well, sorry, I guess more like 75 to 90 minutes. And then we will take a 10-minute break. At that time, we will provide a link to a feedback form for you to fill out during the break. Please take the time to fill out this form. Your feedback is extremely important to us, and it helps to inform how we move forward. And then we will move on to the Q&A segment, which will take us up to 9 p.m. And there's one extra thing I'd like to add. We're putting something in the chat, a link for you to tell us how you found out about the event. We'd like to know. Anyway, tonight's presenters are here to help demystify the overall process of successful grant writing, especially if you're new to it, and also some of the specifics of writing a grant proposal for the organizations they represent. So without further ado, I will pass you on to Taylor Poitras from Cada. Enjoy the evening, everybody.
Great. Thank you, Marco. Hi, everyone. My name is Taylor Poitras, and I work at Calgary Arts Development. I have a bit of a cold, but I'm feeling a little bit better today, so hopefully I'm not coughing too much, but I might mute myself here and there just to chug some water or get some coughs out. But I'm just going to start by sharing my screen. Okay. Slideshow. Oops. All right. Can someone just give me a verbal cue if you can see the slideshow? All right. I see a thumbs up from Kari. Thank you. All righty. Let me just set myself up here so I can see my notes. All right. So I'm going to try to keep this under 25 minutes, which is tough for me if you've ever met me. I am not good at summarizing, but there's a couple places I think I can skim, and an FYI that I'm happy to share these slides and any resources or links that I mention. I have a document that I'll send to Elephant Artist Relief to share with any of the attendees. So don't feel like you have to take screenshots or, scramble to write a lot of notes. All right, so for those of you who might not be familiar with Calgary Arts Development Authority, the A is silent, we're commonly referred to as Cada, and we're the city's designated arts development and municipal granting organization. So we're mandated to steward public taxpayer dollars for the public good and for the benefit of all Calgarians. We believe in arts-led city building and fostering a sustainable and resilient arts sector here in Calgary, which we do primarily through making grants to individual artists, artist collectives, and nonprofit arts organizations here in Calgary, or Mohkinstsis, as it's known in Blackfoot. So before I dive into granting, which I know is what we're primarily here for, I did want to briefly go over some of the other departments at Cada and the work that they do and what they have to offer you as artists. So the first one is classifieds. This is a free classified listing service. So you can search for or get the word out about job opportunities, volunteer opportunities, calls for submission, calls to artists, residencies, auditions, anything like that. We have a What's On in Calgary event listing service, which is also free. So you can search this event listing by discipline, family-friendly events, free events that are happening in the city. We have a directory, which is a free artist and cultural directory that artists and organizations, partners, and more can utilize. So it's available to anyone working in Calgary. And we are, I think, continuing to develop that site, that area of the website. So definitely take a look. We also have a weekly newsletter, which is really great to sign up for. You get to hear about any programs that we have to offer, info sessions that we might be hosting. You can hear about any of the great work that Kate is doing, or we also share things that are going on in the city and highlighting other artists. Lastly, Space Finder. So the Spaces team at Cada runs a variety of initiatives that support artists and organizations in accessing space. You can learn more about the space resources that we have. I'll send a link to that. That part of the website is also under redevelopment, but the team is always available to answer questions. We have an engagement team, which is the group that is primarily focused on organizing and running annual events and awards, things like the Creative Calgary Congress, the Mayor's Lunch, Cultural Leaders Legacy Awards, Poet Laureate, et cetera, et cetera. And then we have an area of the website that I really love called Living a Creative Life. And you can learn all about Calgarians who are living their best creative lives. And we feature folks through the Storytelling Project, Photo of the Month, Signatory Spotlight, and we have a web series that Adora Nufor hosts. And so she features artists and things happening in the city all the time, which is really great to check out. And it's on our YouTube page. Here we have the research and impact team. So they do sector-wide research, data analysis, benchmarking. They conduct surveys about all kinds of important issues happening within the arts here. And all of that data and the results of that are shared publicly with the committee, and we use that to inform our future arts development activities and grants. So if you're interested in looking at any of those publications, you can check them out on the website as well. Public art. So in March 2021, the City of Calgary announced Cada as the future operator for Calgary's public art program. So the City of Calgary is working with Cada over a 3-year transition period until 2024. And the public art team has run a couple programs since it's come to Cada. One program was providing funding for public art projects that were led by community associations and community groups. And they had a second program that provided grants for artist-led public art projects. And they intend to continue running similar programs pending city funding. There's a lot more going on with public art, but just in the sake of time, I'll skip over some of that. But if you have any questions about what's coming up in the public art world, program-wise, training-wise, mentorship-wise, I know they have a lot of things that they want to seek. And so you can reach out to that team at any time. I'll share their contact info as well. Okay, so this is the good stuff. The community investment team, we exist at Cada to create and administer the granting programs. And those make up more than 75% of our total annual budget from the City of Calgary. So this budget and these programs are separate from public art, just to clarify. But beyond running the process, our team is also here to direct you to other potential resources or supports. And of course, if you are applying to a grant, we're here to help you fairly access and navigate the programs, which can include providing accommodations and just to simply help you tell your story in an authentic and clear way through your applications. So this is a list of our current community investment team at Cada, which has actually changed a little bit recently. So we have Melissa, who's moved it. Well, they've been sort of doing the manager and director position for a while now, but we recently hired Alan Rosales, who some of you might know in the community. They've just come on board this week, and I think they might even be in the room today. So welcome, Alan. Grant specialists, there's myself, Marta, Perpetual, and Morgan. Marta runs the programs that are specifically for arts organizations, while I focus on the individual and collective programs. Perpetual is kind of helping both of us out with all of those programs. And then Morgan Posberg is running the Indigenous programs, which Sable used to run, but Sable's moved up to our leadership team. And then we have Van Chu, who is supporting all of us on the grants team with coordination and administration. So you can learn about the whole Cada team on our website. We have bios and all of our emails are available there as well. All right, so I wanted to take a moment to talk a little bit about our commitment to equity at Cada, which is an ongoing commitment and learning journey. It's important to acknowledge that systems like granting and public funding are usually designed in a one-size-fits-all way, meaning that they're designed for the dominant culture and are rooted in colonial Western European academic systems, which create barriers to access for many artists in our communities who are seeking and deserving of support. So one obvious example of these barriers at Cada is that we're currently sharing our programs and accepting applications primarily in an online written format in English. So that alone creates technological, linguistic, communication, and cultural barriers, just to name a few. We acknowledge that our actions, both conscious and unconscious, past and present, have benefited some communities while limiting opportunities and outcomes for others. As a public funder, we have a responsibility to ensure equitable access to public funding. And we envision a city where all artists have the freedom, agency, and platform to share and amplify their stories, art, culture, and experiences. To that end, we are dedicated to addressing and working to eliminate institutional inequity in our programs, policies, and practices. And our staff are accountable to ensuring that lines of communication are open, welcoming, and clear, and that our application processes and assessment processes are fair and deeply considerate. While we've been continuing to expand and improve our processes and policies around equity and accessibility, we still have a long way to go. And we aim to continue building relationships with folks in the community, particularly those who are most directly affected, about the challenges and barriers that exist in granting and working to create more equitable systems. We've also identified equity priority groups and adopted a specific equity measure for some of our programs, which you can read in more detail on our website and within the program guidelines. So in recognition of some of the barriers that I just mentioned, we're open to working one-on-one with applicants to develop accommodations or approaches that suit their unique abilities and situations. So some examples of accommodations are translation of written materials into other languages, including ASL, transcription of verbal meetings or audio and video recordings into a written document, language interpretation for phone or video meetings, video or audio applications. That means that if you would prefer to answer application questions verbally, you can submit an audio or video recording of yourself to our staff, or we can help you record that and use that for the grant application process instead. And we also offer grant writing assistance, which I'll touch more on in the next slide. In addition, our staff are available to offer feedback on any of your draft applications before you submit. So just remember to reach out early and we can assist you with any of that. And while it is often helpful to get feedback before you submit, we do also offer feedback after the process has run for most of our programs, so you can also hear what the committee thought of your application. So in recognition of the limitation of our staff to adequately support all applicant needs, we've begun to formalize a process for applicants to request application assistance, which means financial assistance to help alleviate some of the costs that are associated with preparing and submitting an application or a final report or accepting an investment agreement. So really at any stage of the grant process. Who can request this type of assistance? Well, individuals who self-identify as being deaf, hard of hearing, having a disability, or living with a mental illness, or an artist that's facing language, geographic, or cultural barriers. So if you're interested in application assistance, all you have to do is send us an email to myself or the grants@ email address, ideally a couple weeks before you plan to apply. And anyone can help you with this. So it can be a professional service provider, or you could also get a trusted friend, family member, peer to support you in that. And all they have to do is invoice us for the number of hours that they assisted. And we have a maximum contribution amount that we're able to offer, and we pay them directly. So that's available as well. All right, so what is a grant? In the context of Cada, a grant is the sum of money awarded by Cada to an artist, group, or arts organization to help them pursue their creative vision, to operate, to complete projects, and to share their work with the public. It can be locally, nationally, or internationally. Unlike a loan, grants don't need to be repaid, but they do require follow-up reporting or other commitments in exchange for the investment. So that usually comes in the form of submitting a final report online. And that just lets us know what actually happened, and you submit sort of a new updated budget that has your actual expense and revenue amounts. For types of grants, Cada offers a variety of different programs each year. Some are specifically for nonprofit arts organizations in Calgary, and others are specifically for individual artists or artist collectives. Some grants and programs offer year-over-year funding, like an operating grant for an organization, while others, and most of them, are one-time grants that are specific to a project or an outcome or an initiative, so something like a project grant. Lots of funders will have different kinds of programs. Sometimes they're really specific to a type of activity like research or creation, or presenting your work publicly or traveling and touring. Others might be related to a specific community or some kind of context, like a COVID-specific funding program or something that's focused on truth and reconciliation or anti-racism. So it's important to, read the guidelines and make sure you're understanding what the program exists for, if you're eligible, what the goals are, how it's going to be assessed, and all of those good things. Cada's programs vary year to year based on things like our budget from the city, program evaluation, community feedback, and just the current context of the arts. So whatever we think is really needed in the community at the time. Our program cycles run on a calendar year, so from January to December, and they're typically announced at the very beginning of the year. So for 2023, we'll announce our programs in January 2023. And then the full guidelines usually come out a little bit closer to whenever the program is opening. We have a full list of our programs on our website, and that's under the investment programs area. And lastly here, I wanted to just make a note about taxes because it's important to consider the tax implications of receiving a grant. So if you're an individual or you're receiving a grant on behalf of a collective, you might, and if you do receive more than $500 from Cada in a single calendar year, then Cada is required to issue a T4A form for the full amount of the grant that you received. And according to the CRA, the Canada Revenue Agency, our grants to individual artists are considered artist grants, and they're entered in line 105 of the T4A tax slip. So when you file your taxes, you can deduct all reasonable grant expenses related to the production of your project from the total grant amount. So in order to show those amounts of the grant that were spent on things like materials, rentals, paying other artists, you need to track all of your expenses and keep your receipts, any contracts or written proof of payment to other artists, so that way you can properly deduct them. And then you're only taxed on the amount that you keep as your own artist fee or perhaps subsistence. Always check with the CRA. We're not really allowed to give tax advice, but we do have a lot of resources around taxes available on our website, and we're happy to answer questions, but always seek out an accountant because everyone's situation can be very unique to them. All right, so how are our grants assessed? Applications to Cada programs are peer assessed, meaning that they're evaluated by a committee made up of artistic peers, individual artists, and art workers with experience and knowledge from a variety of different artistic disciplines and practices. Since our programs are multidisciplinary, so are our juries. And assessment committees are chosen to represent the broad diversity of Calgary and its artistic communities. And this includes, but is not limited to, discipline, gender, sexuality, age, religion, belief, nation, physical, and neurological identities. Peer assessment committees help ensure that we're fairly and responsibly distributing public dollars to artists on behalf of the City of Calgary. And the assessment committees for our programs have the same guidelines and criteria as you do. So there's no hidden criteria. You always know what you're going to be evaluated on. Committees review and score all the applications online and make recommendations together through an assessment process that's usually facilitated by a specialist like myself. The size of the program and the volume of applications that we receive will often determine the size and number of committees that we need to run any given program. And we pay all of our assessors an honorarium to serve on the committee. Each program will have, an assessor terms of reference document that I always encourage folks to read through. It tells you, outlines the honorarium, and it tells you what assessors are being held to and what they're responsible for and what we ask them to commit to. And assessors are kept confidential and anonymous until the following year when we publish a full list of all the assessors who participated in any program for the year. The membership of our peer committees is chosen through public nominations and staff expertise. So if you or anyone you know is ever interested in sitting on a jury, please reach out. We have a nomination form on our website, or you can just send me an email. All right. Where to start? So consider your own artistic practice and goals and where you're at in your career and what you need to do next, whether it be about research, creation, experimentation, presentation, or professional development. Some questions that might be helpful to ask yourself is, what goals do you want to pursue? What's the most urgent, important, or relevant thing for you right now? Do you have a specific project in mind? What opportunities currently exist? And what is feasible for you at this time? Read the full guidelines for any program that you're thinking of applying to, including the frequently asked questions. Those are filled with really valuable information, especially at Cada, because I work on them every year. All the clues about what matters are in those program guidelines and FAQ. Remember that while it's our job to be an expert in the programs that we offer, it's your job to be an expert in your own artistic practice. So be authentic to who you are as an artist, what you want to do, why it's important to you, and what you care about. It's your responsibility to tell a clear and meaningful story about how your work or your proposed project aligns with the goals and the criteria of the program that you're applying to. And it can be really helpful to reach out to a program officer like myself before you apply. They'll be able to help you understand what the goals of the program are, what the criteria are, if you're eligible, and how the program will be assessed, and if applying is actually a good fit based on what you want to do. Ask clarifying questions and start early. Don't risk wasting your time applying to something that you aren't eligible for or that isn't a strong fit for that program. All right, so eligibility can vary from program to program, but for Cada's individual and collective programs, this is generally true across all of them. Our individual and collective programs are intended to provide funding to individual artists or artist collectives in Calgary or Mcqueen and Blackfoot, and that it can be working in any artistic discipline and be at any stage of their practice as long as they're pursuing a professional practice. So just to clarify, while activities that you are applying for, they don't have to take place in Calgary, but the applicant must be either Calgary-based or be able to demonstrate that the majority of their work is accessible to the citizens of Calgary and that they have a meaningful and ongoing relationship with the city here and its artistic communities. And we welcome applications from folks working in all artistic disciplines and their various cultural forms. So I won't list them off, but it's all artistic disciplines basically that you can think of. We don't have standard definitions for emerging or mid-career or established artists. Those definitions can be different based on discipline, type of practice, or individual experience. So we just say that our programs are open to any professional artist at any stage of their artistic career. And we basically consider a professional artist to be an artist who is actively pursuing a career in the arts and who has invested in the development of their artistic skills, voice, and goals. And there's a deeper definition online that you can check out for individual artists and for an artist collective. All right, so I'm not going to spend too much time. This is a project grant program because it's already run this year. The next one won't be available till 2023, but this gives you a bit of an overview of what this year's project grant looked like. So it did offer one-time project funding to individuals and collectives, and they could apply for one project or maybe a phase of a longer project. And it offered up to $15,000 for individuals or $20,000 for collectives. And we'll share the results of that program on our website like we do with all of our programs later on. This just gives you an overview or an idea of what a project grant usually can cover. So it basically runs the gamut of any type of project: research, creation, presentation, professional development, experimentation, et cetera, et cetera. We'll probably have one next year too, so you can always stay tuned for January when we announce our programs. This one, however, I did want to spend a little bit more time on because we do have it still available. So our new Artist Development Microgrant is intended to support professional and business development activities for individuals and collectives. The goal of the program is to contribute to the skills and knowledge that's required to advance artists' careers and develop artistic practices. So it's important to understand that this program cannot fund activities that are primarily focused on the creation and production of work. So you cannot apply to create or adapt a body of work or put on a show, an event, or an exhibition. It really is intended to fund activities that are related to the development of an artist's professional artistic practice and career. So activities can include professional development or artistic skill development. So things like training, lessons, mentorship, courses, workshops, residencies, etc. This can include opportunities where you maybe have been invited to attend, present, or participate in something related to your artistic practice. You can also apply for business development activities, including knowledge building in entrepreneurship, marketing, finance, and more. So examples could be taking business training, marketing training, tax literacy, budgeting, branding, business finances, or mentorship. Career development activities could include the development of platforms to share and sell your work, the development of audiences and artistic networks. This might include activities like having your work professionally documented or cataloged, creating or upgrading your professional website, developing online assets or accessing specific technology, releasing, marketing, or promoting work that has already been created, or say attending a conference or a networking event. Keep in mind, opportunities and activities don't have to take place in Calgary, but artists must be Calgary-based, as I mentioned earlier. And for this program, you can apply for up to $5,000. And while we do understand that most professional development opportunities are really centered on an individual's learning and growth, we have opened up the program to include artist collectives as well. So if a collective chooses to apply, they'll still be subject to the $5,000 maximum, except for a couple unique situations. For example, if a collective, say a band, was invited to participate in something overseas and they each needed a plane ticket, that changes, the amount of the opportunity. And in order to access it, it would very quickly, I think, reach over that $5,000 mark. So we may make exceptions in those cases where the price for everyone to participate exceeds that $5,000. So just reach out if that might apply to you. But if a band was working on their website, the price doesn't change because there's 6 of them versus 3 of them. So it would still be up to $5,000 total. We're only going to be accepting 1 application per individual or collective per intake. So the total funding available for the program is $325,000, and it's prorated across the 4 deadlines throughout the year. So as you can see, the first 2 intakes have already passed, but there's 2 more coming up, one September 6th and one on November 7th. So you're welcome to put an application into either of those. They must be submitted by 4:30 p.m. on the day. And notifications usually take about 6 weeks from the cutoff date to be received. And activities funded through this program must be completed within 6 months of grant notification. So the guidelines are on the website. For more information, go there. You can also reach out to me if you have any questions. Definitely pay attention to the criteria of the program, how it's going to be scored and evaluated. And there's also a handy little chart in the guidelines under the when should you apply section that basically shows you which intake you're eligible for depending on when your activity occurs. Okay. So the following 3 programs are also available, but specifically for First Nation, Métis, and Inuit artists or collectives. And some of these programs are also available to First Nation, Métis, or Inuit-led arts organizations. So there's the Original Peoples Program, the Indigenous Artists Microgrant, and the Honoring the Children Grant. So these 3 programs are led by our new Indigenous program specialist, Morgan Posberg, which I introduced earlier. So you can reach out to them if you have questions about any of these. I'll run through them really, really quickly. The Original Peoples Investment Program has been running for a number of years now, and it supports the preservation and revitalization of First Nation, Métis, and Inuit art through art-based projects. And these are all validated and supported by First Nation, Métis, and Inuit artists, community members, elders, and knowledge keepers. And we recognize and support both traditional and contemporary Indigenous artists and art practices. So this is really similar to a project grant in terms of what you can apply for. It can be research, creation, development, presentation, professional development, experimentation, et cetera, et cetera. Folks can request up to $15,000 as individuals, $20,000 as collectives, and $25,000 for organizations. The total pool is $650,000. These guidelines are going to be published sometime this month. So it's opening quite soon in September, and then the deadline is still to be decided, but it'll be sometime in October. And then notifications will come out a few months afterwards, and funding will likely be in December 2022. And any activity that's funded through the program needs to be complete by July 31st, 2024. And so stay tuned for those full guidelines. All right, and then we have an Indigenous Artist Microgrant. This is really intended to support First Nation, Métis, and Inuit artists living and working in the Treaty 7 region for activities and expenses that are related to the preservation, maintenance, and revival of Indigenous culture and tradition. So eligible proposals might include projects related to crafting and creating regalia, or projects related to traditional methods and forms. And so the full guidelines are published, and they were created with our Indigenous Advisory Committee. All right, and so the next slide here, this is an ongoing program. So the guidelines were published in April, and it'll run until all the funds have been allocated. So there's no deadline to apply. Staff will work with applicants to determine the best way to submit their application, which could be in a written form or an oral form. A pre-recorded video, for example. So if anyone's interested in applying, just email the grants team with Indigenous Artist Microgrant in the title. And projects funded through this program must be complete within 18 months of the notification. And these will be reviewed by our Indigenous Advisory Committee, who will make recommendations to the Cada staff. How am I at for time? Okay, wrap it up soon. So Honoring the Children grant, this one supports artistic projects that are responding to and honoring or in memory of the loss of life, culture, ceremony, and language amongst the original peoples of this land because of the residential school system. So we started this program back in 2021 when the discovery of the 215 children at the Kamloops Indian Residential School was happening, and it's still ongoing. More and more graves are still being discovered. And so this program will exist this year as well. If you are interested in receiving funding through this program, just reach out to Morgan. There's no deadline to apply. Again, it's the same type of process. And the total amount available is $75,000 this year. So now this is just more general advice. So when you're preparing an artist statement, your artist statement is basically an introduction to who you are and your overall art practice and goals. So it shouldn't be overly long or difficult to understand, but rather a concise and helpful overview of your work and what's most important to you. It should demonstrate who you are, what you value, what kind of work you make, how you make it, and why it's important to you. Your artist statement will likely change over time as you and your practice do, so you can continue to update it as necessary. And remember that context matters. So the type of artist statement that you would include to, say, a gallery show or as program notes is going to look different than the type of statement you would include with a grant application. This introduction provides the most significant context for how the assessment committee will understand how your project connects to your overall practice and goals. An artistic resume or CV is basically a clear list of experiences that are relevant to your practice. It can be a really helpful tool for assessors to view alongside your statement, and it gives them a better understanding of your practice, communities, experience, and history. There's many, many formats for resumes and CVs. For the purposes of our program, simplicity and readability are more important than it looking fancy or being complicated. So typically, a date list format from most recent experiences to least recent experiences is most common. Just make sure you're including important information such as dates, locations, and a brief description of each experience if it's not obvious within the title. And your resume can include all kinds of things like education, training, workshops, residencies, works produced, awards and grants, past exhibitions or performances, media, professional affiliations, and the list goes on. All that said, don't let a resume intimidate you. There's many valuable experiences and entry points into a life and a career in the arts. So it's okay to have gaps in your practice or times where you weren't creating or working in the arts for whatever reason. It also does not have to include only professional experiences. You can include anything that helps people understand how you got here. A little bio or a blurb at the beginning is okay too. Many artists post their resumes on their websites too, so you can take a look at examples online from artists that you know. Okay, sorry, I'm having a hard time advancing my slides. For budgeting, I'll try to skim this a little more quickly. Don't work backwards from the request amount. Basically means don't just say, oh, this grant is offering up to $15,000. Let me see what I can do for $15,000. It's actually a lot better if you think about what you want to do and start adding up your project expenses from there to see what the project truly costs. And it might be under 15, it might be close to 15, it might be high over that amount too. So be realistic and ask for what you truly need. This often leads to the next question of what if my proposed activity does cost more than the maximum grant amount available? And if that's the case, you'll have to show how you're going to fund the remaining expenses, either through other grants or sponsorships, fundraising, your own personal investment, etc. Grants are just one option for supporting your project and its costs. If you're applying for additional funding outside the program, but it won't be confirmed before the deadline, do your best to demonstrate that you've done the proper planning. And remember to use the notes section of the budget to clarify all of your line items, show calculations, specify what's confirmed or pending, and just give a description so that folks know what it refers to. Okay. Next. Okay, this is my last slide. General grant tips. Remember that you're not expected to be everything to everyone, and your application won't benefit from trying to write or represent yourself in a way that you think assessors might want to see. Using plain language rather than academic or art speak is often clearer and more concise. Avoid jargon or technical language when you can, remembering that the assessment committee will be made up of many people from different practices and experiences. Don't assume that they're going to understand your specific practice or language. And if you are speaking about something that's really unique to your discipline, be sure to define it. Assessors really appreciate being able to easily read and understand an application since they're often reading quite a few. Be authentic to where you're at in your practice and your career. Having an appreciative sense of where your gaps are, where your challenges or barriers might be, can actually help demonstrate capacity, awareness, and potential. Avoid making overly generalized claims in your application and be specific and realistic. Do your research. Make sure you can back up what you're stating in your application. In other words, I often say show, don't tell. And that's kind of like, when you did math homework, you had to show your work, not just share the final answer. I think the same goes with grant applications. It can also be really helpful to have someone who might not be familiar with your discipline or your work read over your application and maybe summarize it or share back to you what they think it's about. And their questions might actually uncover some assumptions that you're making in your story, or where more clarity or emphasis might be useful. On the flip side of that, it can also be helpful to have someone well-versed in your discipline or practice who has experience with similar projects read over your application as well. They can often identify red flags or gaps in your planning or your budget. We talk a lot at Cada as well about how grant writing is an act of storytelling. This, again, does not mean that the application should be an artistic expression in and of itself, but rather that your goal is to paint a full and complete narrative of who you are, what you want to do, and how you're going to achieve it, and also why it's important to you and others. Start the process early. Give yourself time to put your project into writing, to leave it and come back to it, reflect on it, have others take a look at it, ask questions, and gather support material. Sometimes you might need to reach out to someone to get a support letter, which can take time. You want to ensure you're putting in an application for the project that you've done the best planning for, so try not to rush it, start early, and submit early if you can. All right, so this is my contact info if you have any questions about any of our individual or collective programs, or just general questions if you're seeking resources or support. If you don't know who to email, just email grants@calgaryartsdevelopment.com, and we can always triage you to the correct staff person, whether it's public art or communications or organizations, whatever it might be. We're still working remotely for the most part, so email is the best way to get a hold of us. And you can also check out our website for lots more resources. Okay, sorry, it's probably not 25 minutes. I'll stop sharing now and stop talking.
No, that's okay, Taylor, no worries. We'll just thank you so much for that. And considering you had a cold, you did a great job. No worries at all. So I will thank you for that and pass us right along to Kari Mcqueen from AFA.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, absolutely.
Perfect. I'm going to share my screen.
Okay.
There we go. Is that up for you guys?
Yep, all good.
Excellent. Thank you, Taylor. You covered a lot of great points in that. That's great. So some of my presentation, I'll skim through a little bit because I don't want to reiterate what Taylor did such a great job on describing for us. So I'm Kari. I'm here based in Edmonton, otherwise known as Amiskwatsuskaigan. And I apologize if I haven't quite pronounced that word correctly. I'm still working on learning that. And welcome, thank you, everybody who has come here with us tonight. Now I can do that. First off, what is the Alberta Foundation for the Arts? We're a little bit different from an organization like Cada in that we are actually an agency of the government of Alberta, although we are overseen by a board of directors rather than, say, by the Minister of Culture. The AFA is, however, still responsible to the government of Alberta through the Ministry of Culture and Status of Women. We also are a beneficiary of the Alberta Lottery Fund, and this is really good to know. So if you've heard me talk before, you've heard me say this, is people, you know, go, those taxpayer dollars paying for your art. They don't actually. So that's a good little fun fact. Staff at the ministry, like myself, we're actually contracted to run the AFA's program. So technically, I work for the government of Alberta rather than the Alberta Foundation for the Arts. As for Cada, AFA offers many different kinds of grants. We do have operating grants for organizations, like Cada does as well. And we have grants for individuals, which will be what I focus on here tonight, of course. Our project grants focus on a project, an activity that has a distinct start and end date. And we also have the AFA collection. There's kind of the two main arms. We have granting and arts collection. And the one thing I won't cover a lot tonight is the arts acquisition purchase program. I will also, like Taylor had, I'll be sending this slideshow and some other materials to share with you guys after, so you don't need to screenshot and take copious notes. I will include more detail about the arts acquisition program as well, and I'll touch on it a little later in this too. We also administer 4 scholarship programs, the 2 Queen's Platinum Jubilee programs, one for performing arts, one for visual arts. That program just had its name changed to celebrate the Platinum Jubilee of the Queen. Sorry, this just happened in the last few weeks. And that scholarship used to be a $5,000 award. Now it is a $7,000 award. And the deadline for that is annual, every March 1st. The other 2 programs the AFA runs is one for film and video and the Grant Mcqueen Scholarship, Literary Scholarship. And I believe those 2 are $5,000. I'd have to double check though on those 2 myself. Excuse me. We also support artists in all disciplines who are Alberta residents. So our scope, our reach is more province-wide rather than, say, citywide, like a civic fund like Cada is. Excuse me. You can request up to $15,000 from the individual project grant from the AFA, and our grants are broken out by discipline. So for example, I'm the specialist in the visual arts and new media, and that's the grant program I run. We also have one that focuses on dance, music, literary, theater, and so forth. Excuse me, sorry for coughing in your ear. Now, we don't support retroactive projects. So when you submit a grant to the AFA, your activity needs to start, literally, it can start the day after you submit your application. And we also have many categories, as you can see on the screen there. AFA grants do not support non-Alberta residents, and that includes principal artists in collaborative projects. Principals for the AFA are any kind of lead artist or project partner or somebody that has kind of a creative say in the project. Not someone you would say contract to do what they're told, so to speak, but anyone who has a creative say in the project must be also an Alberta resident. Another note about that, principal artists all have to meet our criteria for an individual. So you can't partner with, say, an organization to co-partner and produce a project, because that organization would make eligible. We also don't support recreational training projects. We don't support component activities, and you can think of those as little pieces of a bigger activity. And the example I have on the screen here is, say you're doing your master's degree, you only want to apply for a thesis exhibit, or maybe you only want to apply for 2 classes for the year. We would say, no, you have to apply for at least 1 year or not at all. Applied arts. The AFA doesn't support applied arts because the Alberta government does have cultural industries and other programs separate from us. And that includes things like gaming, architecture, and so on and so forth on the screen. Graphic arts and fashion design are two common requests we get that we don't support, unfortunately. Ongoing activities or activities started before applying. Excuse me, I spoke to that earlier, that yes, your activity has to start after you submit. Ongoing activities simply means that it's not actually a project-based activity. Remember, projects have a distinct start and end date. My favorite thing to kind of semi-joke about, but not in a serious way, whenever people call us, hey, I need help with a grant, I always ask, what do you need? This is the answer we almost always get without exception, because this is the reality for us as artists. We always need money. But that's a bit of a red herring. Money is important, yes, but money is a tool. It helps you to get to the goals that you've set for yourself. So the right question to ask yourself when you're asking about, I need help with a grant, is what are your goals? Do you need that grant money for skill development, research? Do you need to create a new body of work? Professional development, so on and so forth. As for Cada, we also have several grant components, and a lot of funders may have comparable components to their grants. That doesn't mean that they would all function equally in terms of how they need to be done, because every funder is a little bit different. But our three kind of primary components are a detailed project description, a budget, and support materials. These, of course, work together to tell a cohesive story about that project. So they should like corroborate or talk to each other and support each other. The narrative of the project would be talking about, you know, this is what I'm going to do, how I'm going to do it, and so forth. The budget says, here's what it's going to cost me to do what I say I'm going to do. And the support material may say about the project, look, this artist can do it because here's their body of work from the past, or here's a support letter from a colleague. So they can tell that story together that Taylor spoke of. And detailed project description. The assessment criteria for all funders are the windows to the expert panel. So AFA calls our jury an expert panel. These criteria I have on your screen. I've actually just pasted them right from our website. And like Cada, what you see is what you get for our criteria on the website. If you go to our grant page online and you scroll down to how will my application be assessed, this is what you're going to see. It's what is the impact on you as an artist, or perhaps on the genre in Alberta. It's okay if it has more impact on you than the province, for example. It's more a continuum than a has to be one or the other. It could be a blend. Artistic, educational, or promotional merit. It's okay if your project doesn't have all of these things. If you're taking professional development, it may primarily have educational merit for you. If you're producing a body of work to exhibit at a gallery, that may have higher artistic merit, and so on. Ability to complete the project is a really important criteria, because the expert panel will look at, through that story, that narrative, and all the parts of your application, can they do what they say they're going to do? They have a timeline that shows that they understand kind of the scope of what they're going to do. Here's what I will do, when I will do it, how I will do it. Here's my hope for outcomes. The budget also speaks to the ability to do the project. Is the budget appropriate? Do they ask for what they need? If you ask for too little, and this is a strategy sometimes people try, and I wouldn't say it's very successful. I wouldn't use it as a means to build your budget. If I ask for a little less, then maybe I'll get the grant because it's a smaller amount. And that's not really how it works for AFA, because that's not a criteria point. The size of your grant is not a measurement. What you need is a measurement. So if you ask for a project this big and you're asking for $1,000, the expert panel might go, we can't support that because we don't think they can do it with that money. So ask for what you need. Personal objectives and potential outcomes, these can sometimes be the most challenging to write about because they haven't happened yet. But that's okay. You don't need to be specific that A and B is going to happen. You can be not generic. You don't want to be too generic, but more like, I am hoping that A and B will happen. Here's how I think it will help me grow. Here's how it's going to advance my career, build my network, or teach me new skills. So now budget and support materials. I'm actually going to show the budget form right in Gate because it's a little easier to look at that as we're speaking about the budget. So like most funders, AFA has some pretty basic commonalities with our budgets. It should be clear and believable. So look things up online. Don't pad your budget. Don't add extra just in case, or in the case of a contingency, because those contingencies are not allowed. And if you have inflated costs, which is called padding artificially, and that's not the real cost, the panel's going to spot that, and that may not look very credible in their eyes. Provide evidence that you've done your research. If you're like using websites to get quotes, you can either make a note in the notes section of the budget or upload a PDF of that website to support where you're getting that from. And like most budgets, if not all of them, it has to be balanced, which means that revenue must equal expenses. And if you're not a budget expert, you can contact me at the AFA. I'm really, really happy to help you with that. Goodness knows it took me a long time to get the hang of budgets back in my own day of learning. So here we have up for you. This is actually what GATE looks like. This is part of the real application form. So I have the budget up, but there's a lot of different ways you can do a budget. And really, when you're looking at the budget, you want to make sure your expenses are eligible. If that's not super clear on the AFA's website, again, you can reach out to me and be like, hey, can you go Gate and check my budget? Or you can phone me and say, can I apply to buy a computer? I really need a computer. And I'm going to say, unfortunately, no, computers are capital items. So we can't let you have that. A capital item is a thing that has a life beyond your project, right? So there's certain things you can apply for and certain things you can't. You can see I've used this to have an example. I'm using painting in kind of a more traditional media as an example. Some people will itemize the budget. There's 10 tubes of paint. And I'm making up these numbers, they aren't accurate. At $50 each comes to this. Some people may decide that they want to just put, say they're going to get 10 items of sizing or paste mat. They just might, sorry, blah, blah, I'm trying to go fast and I'm stumbling a bit. Say they're going to get like gold leaf. They're going to get 6 at 50 and they've itemized that. You can also choose not to itemize it. Maybe you're going to get 10 things of paste wax and it's like $1 each. And again, I'm making that up. You can also put 1 at 150 and leave a note. So you can choose to itemize 10 times $10 or put paint, $500. Either is good. The one thing you want to avoid is having art supplies, $8,000, because that is so vague. Then the jury's going to be like, do they know what they want to get? So there's a balance there. And the comments are really, they're your best helper ever in a budget. And I should apologize, that like red dots and that kind of blurriness you're seeing, that's not your computer or your connection. I have a cable that's being wonky tonight, so that's not you. It's me, unfortunately. So there's all kinds of things you can apply for with the AFA, your materials and supplies. You can pay for things like your studio rent. You can't buy software with an AFA grant, but if you have a subscription, you can pay for that by the month for the length of your project. So on and so forth. AFA also allows you to include subsistence in your grant budget. So don't include a salary for yourself or an artist fee, rather go with subsistence. You can ask for up to $3,000 a month. And that takes the middleman of a salary out, because we all want salaries to pay the bills anyway, right? So, you know, some people choose to break it out by the month. Some, like this example here, might have a studio in the house. So they may break it out, they may not. It's up to you how you want to structure that. You can also apply for things if you have a marketing project or you need to have a show that goes up. Don't forget that documentation of the work is an eligible expense. Framing of your work if you're a painter, a plinth or a pedestal if you're a sculptor, crates to ship the work. These are all eligible expenses. Shipping, traveling, things like that, depending on the kind of project that you have. And as Taylor mentioned, for revenue, this can be blank in an AFA grant. If your $15,000 or less AFA grant covers all of your expenses, that is okay. In this example that I've made here, I have the text here. You can see that GATE automatically tells you what the grant is. And if I didn't have this revenue here, it would be over 15,000 and GATE would not let you submit. So that's a basic budget template right there. Okay, and as I mentioned here, I'll just make sure I didn't forget anything because I'm forgetful and this wasn't in front of me. So yeah, for the different kinds of projects, again, all of these listed up here. Project-related travel also can include per diem and accommodation on top of subsistence. Training, we do actually fund post-secondary. Example, your bachelor degree, your master's degree, as well as mentorships, master classes. If you're an Indigenous person or other individual who wants to meet with elders to learn about cultural knowledge, that counts too. So that's quite wide open. We also support elder fees for people consulting with elders. Documentation counts, marketing expenses if you're creating catalogs of and essays. If you're just doing a straight up book, like, going to do a book, get it designed, lay it out, send it to the printer, we won't pay for the publishing expenses, but we do pay for the artwork related to the book and the writer's fees and your editor's fees. So there's a bit of a gray land there because publishing is a cultural industry, which, like fashion designs, kind of not a thing AFA's mandate covers. Okay, we also have an online grant system, and it's called GATE. For those of you who have used it in the old days, i.e. before 2021, it had its barriers, let me tell you. It's improved a lot, but this is the way we take applications, because we also recognize that there are limits to accessibility for an online system that's developed to kind of do its job and streamline those grants. That's why you would reach out to me. If you need help with an online application, I can help walk you through it, show you how to do it. I can even take documents and upload them for you if your internet is slow. So when in doubt, reach out for help, because that's what we're there to help you with. We are also really firm in that our grant deadline coming up this fall is September 1st, 11:59 p.m. We're really strict about that deadline. So if you submit it at 12:05 the next morning, that 6-minute difference, you'll be considered late and not eligible. So do make sure that if you need to work late into the night, which is not that rare when you're an artist with other commitments, try to get it submitted a half hour before deadline to be safe. Sometimes the server gets slow because it's busy with literally 600 to 800 people at that time. Also, keep in mind when you're working with granting, with any grant, be it AFA, Cada, Canada Council, there's two things going on when you're working on a grant. One is your grant itself. You're producing the grant. You're working on that content. The other is, if you're new to the online system, give yourself time to get used to that system, to play with it, navigate a little, go through the help guide, and all of that stuff. Those are two different skills you're working with. So make sure you leave yourself time to reduce that added stress of trying to learn two things at once. If possible, don't apply at the last minute. Sometimes it just goes that way, and that's okay. But again, we're only available at the office till about 4:30 every day. So if you happen to be working at night and something comes up, I highly encourage you, bang an email off, leave a phone message, and then the next morning we'll get those, and we will get to as soon as we can. We take calls and emails in the order that they come in, and we get about 50 to 80 a day, maybe 100, really close to deadline. So, always get that question out there so that you're in the queue. The AFA also uses an expert panel process, as does Cada and many other funders. Each of the I can't talk. Assessment is based on the criteria on our website. So like Cada, what you see is what you get. That is the exact criteria that our panel uses when they're having their discussions. Okay, so in the case of AFA grants, the expert panel's task is not to provide a critique of your work or to make a decision based on their personal tastes. We also make our panels up of people from different panels, people from different regions, cultures, genders, backgrounds, etc., influenced by the types of projects that we get at the table. So if we have a lot of applications in the media arts, working with robotics and video, etc., we're going to make sure there's at least one media artist at the table. We also aim to have, there's always a woman at the table, always somebody, a BIPOC person as well, so that we don't have an all-white panel, for lack of a better word. So we're trying to be very sensitive about that and sensible about that too. After the jury, all recommendations that the jury makes are approved by the AFA's board of directors. Once that approval happens, then we're literally there the very next morning, sending out notifications to you guys, our applicants. Successful applicants receive a letter indicating the amount that you got and the conditions of your grant. Unsuccessful applicants are also informed through the GATE system itself. So whether you're successful or not, GATE also sends automatic notifications. It takes about 4 months after deadline to hear from us, because we get quite a few applicants for visual arts, 110 every deadline is. We also have a final report connected to our project grants. We just actually done some work streamlining our final report. So for those of you who may have filled one in the past, we've got it down to 2 open-ended questions, some drop-down check yes, no's, and of course the budget you send you plop in your actuals, you upload a document or photo or something as proof of project completion, you're done. If you have your receipts in order, it takes you 15 minutes to do the report. So we've made it as streamlined and as easy as we can without the AFA's auditor going, hey, we need more. So we've worked really hard to make that as simple as we can. The report is always due 60 days after the project end date. So when you apply for a granted AFA and you're like, my project ends December 31st, GATE automatically generates the report date for you. Here are, and I'm wrapping up now, there's some basic statistics here about the AFA. On average, about 25 to 30% of applications are successful each grant deadline. And that's across all of them, like Indigenous arts, visual arts, music, etc. So the budget is modified after everything is said and done to make sure that there is an equitable 25 to 30% across all programs. So you can't apply for music because you think you have a better chance of getting funds than, say, visual arts. And it's really important to keep in mind that an unsuccessful application does not mean that your project lacks merit. A lot of great projects don't get funding. Sometimes it could be simply that someone is new to grant writing and maybe something wasn't communicated as clearly as they thought. Sometimes, and this is common, unfortunately, the AFA does not always have the budget that we need to support all the yeses on the list. So, you know, we might be able to support 10 of 12 projects or whatever like that. So sometimes we're out of money. And then you'll get a letter from us called a recommended project. And basically what we do is we park your project in GATE. It just kind of lives there. And if at the end of our fiscal year, we have any unused monies get reallocated to this program, then we may reach out to you. And this is usually in March, this has happened, going, hey, we got some extra money. Can you still do the project? Do you want the grant? So that happens sometimes, but it's never a thing to bank on. We also publish an annual report every year. I think it comes out around July. Like Cada, it includes all of our past year's activity. It's really fun to look at because you can see where did the grant money go? Where is our spending going? You can see how many grants were allocated to which part of the province, some nice charts and graphs in there. And also who sat on the panels. And we're always looking for panelists as well. So here's an example on screen of how many applications we get. And this is per deadline. So this is not once a year, this is twice a year. So double that number for a calendar year. A general summary. It's important to note, especially if you're new to grants, getting grants is perceived, and we will admit this because it's true, it's perceived to add credibility to somebody's art practice, but grants are not your practice. They are a tool to help you reach the goals of your practice. And that being said, there are many, many artists, established artists, emerging new artists that they choose not to do grants. They don't want to put the time in. They don't see it worth, the returns aren't enough for what they need, or they just don't like doing grants, or for whatever reason. And that is okay too. You are not less of an artist, excuse me, or less of a professional if you don't do grants. As Taylor mentioned, it is simply one option of many to generate funds for your practice. We do offer feedback on your drafts before deadlines as well. So if you're not sure if your project's eligible, you can email or call me, or we can set up a Zoom type meeting, be like, hey, this is what I want to do. And I can walk you through that. I can also look at your drafts, give you technical feedback on how it speaks to the criteria. Is it clear? Because if I'm not really close to you or your project, and I'm not clear about what you're writing, and I'm a bit confused, the expert panel might be too. So that's where I can help you there. Also with your budget, etc. If you're interested, you can also sit on an expert panel for the AFA as well. We have an application form online, or you can email me if you're interested. It's a great opportunity to learn about how the process works from this side of the table. We also pay you a meeting fee as well as reading fees per application. And our expert panels are done virtually now, so we don't ask you to travel all over the province anymore to come to us. As Taylor mentioned, grants are taxable income in Canada. So I will also have some links embedded into this. community groups, Edmonton Arts Council, Calgary Arts Development, of course, you guys know about, and some of my contact information there. And I think that that is it. Next up is Chris.
Hello, Margot, you're going to just say something?
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't find the button. Just want to say thank you so much, Kari. That was awesome as always. And here is Chris Carson.
Thank you very, very much. And I just have to get to sweet. Okay, here we go. Okay, here we go. Anyway, I always learn something from Taylor and Kari. So thank you very much. This is going to be my presentation. CARFAC is not a grantor. Instead, we kind of teach people how to become a bit more professional in their art practice. So this is just me, my husband, my 2 cats. So this is just, I have been the executive director at CARFAC, Alberta for 12 years now. Okay, so what is CARFAC? CARFAC is basically artists working for artists. And as the founder of CARFAC said, no one is more qualified to speak on behalf of artists than artists themselves. So that's what CARFAC does. We teach people to speak on their behalf. And so this is just a postcard that CARFAC Alberta put out. And again, it just says artists working for artists in various different languages. So what is CARFAC known for? Simply speaking, we're known for, has the artist been paid? We're known for making sure that artists actually get paid for what they do. And the vision of CARFAC Alberta is CARFAC Alberta envisions a province where all visual artists thrive, artwork is valued, rights are respected, and creativity is integral to our communities. And our mission is CARFAC Alberta advances best practices for all visual artists in Alberta through education, advocacy, and engagement. And before we just get started, I just wanted to say something quick. CARFAC Alberta is also known for best practices. We have a series of 7 best practices that have been produced in partnership with the Alberta Craft Council, Alberta Media Arts Alliance. And these are documents that are available free of charge on the CARFAC Alberta website. You can go to that at any time, just basically carfacalberta.com. And you can kind of read these kind of best practices on things like contracts, the use of your artist's work for fundraising, how to work with a commercial gallery, a public gallery, organizing a juried exhibition, the best practice for community-based art, for public art. So those are available, and those are an excellent resource if you just want to become a bit more professional in your art practice. Just seek those out, carfacalberta.com. And like the 2 other talks, you can, if you want to, you don't have to take notes when I'm speaking, you can just reach out to EAR and they will actually send you a copy of this talk. So basically in around 20 minutes, we're going to just do a few things tonight. We're just going to talk a bit about what is a grant? Should I apply for grant funding? Where, when, and why? Other opportunities that are like grants. We're going to offer you a few tips on how to write a grant and the benefits of writing a grant. So CARFAC is not a grantor. So this is just on general sort of information on grants and the thinking behind getting grants. So both Taylor and Kari kind of talked about it, and just a grant is just money given that does not have to be repaid. And it's for, so basically that was covered. And this was also covered. A grant is a government tool for funding ideas and projects to provide public service, stimulate the economy, and benefit the general public. And the grant process, it just follows a linear life cycle that includes creating the funding opportunity, applying, making award decisions, and successfully implementing the award. And so there was phases of this. There's the pre-award phase, funding opportunities, and the application review. So all these things at the bottom of these are just, a lot of my work just comes from the web or something like that. So all of these are the links that where I'm getting this information from. Okay, so now when you're thinking about a grant, you really have to think about your career. You have to, first of all, you have to know what you do. You have to know what you want. You have to know who you are. Then you can start deciding, is this going to be the right fit for me? So these are the kind of questions that you have to ask yourself every time. You have to really think about your career before you decide if you want to go for a grant. So all these places on the web kind of tell you a bit about how to write a winning grant proposal and stuff like that. And this is just general information where you start with some kind of a problem statement or a need statement where you say, I need money, you know, basically like that. And then you support this need statement or this problem statement with some evidence. And this evidence could be digital images, photographs, news, newspaper articles about you, reports, anything like that. And then you use language and a format that is easy to be read and to be easily understood. So that's kind of simple sort of way of how you just do it. And for any kind of grant to work for anybody, it has to be part of your plan. That is so very important. And a plan may be unwritten, or it may be a fully developed document. It may be something like a 20-page business plan that you developed, or it could be written on just on a napkin. Sometimes we make a short-term plan when we apply for an exhibition, or we apply for a grant or a residency. That might be part of the plan we formed on what we are going to do for the next 2 months, 3 months, or maybe the year. And sometimes we develop our plan just in our sketchbook or our diary when we say, I really have to, or my calendar when I write down certain things and say, on this date, I should be applying for that. Sometimes our plan is our New Year's resolution. Okay, now a grant is really like your business and strategic plan. Grants are for the future, and you are not likely to hear back from a grant for 2 to 6 months. So writing a grant, you are planning your art career. And as success rates vary, always have a plan B in case you do not achieve funding on your grant proposal. Now this grant is the start of your business plan. So the question remains, do you have a plan? Now the next question is, should I apply for something and why? Now before you start with this big question called why. There's 2 parts of the question why. The first is the why is rational. You know, and that is am I doing something that really requires funding? You know, that's the first question you kind of ask yourself. And is a grant a good opportunity for me to get money so I'm able to do a certain kind of project? So that's the kind of rational answer to why. But there's a second part of why that we always have to ask ourselves. I mean, Kari referred to this in a certain kind of way. There's an opportunity cost when we start applying for a grant. It takes a lot of time. It takes up time, it takes resources. And so we have to consider that. How much time and resources are required for me to fill in this application? That's a real question. How much time? And we have to think about, are we prepared enough to win this grant? And we have to think, is the project and plan and my business plan complete? And now, if you're unprepared, that's not necessarily bad, but you might consider waiting for another opportunity. You might consider, maybe I should wait for a year and get my thoughts in my head together so that when I apply, I'm ready to do that. So think of it this way. Every grant is an exciting opportunity, but you have to consider the costs associated with applying. And then you do this cost analysis. Is it worthwhile for me to apply? I mean, we heard about the what Kari said were maybe 1 in 4 or 1 in 3 that might get a grant. Is it worth it? So we do a kind of cost-benefit analysis. Okay. Now, there are also a lot of other opportunities and grants available, and a lot of them are not advertised. I mean, think about what community groups, social agencies, nonprofit organizations, universities and college do. There are many opportunities out there that are never advertised. You can also consider building or designing a grant opportunity yourself and do it yourself. And even though last week they did one on the Canada Council, I just want to say that to apply for a Canada Council, or a lot of these things, like even to apply to get into the AFA grant, you have to be either apply first. In the case of the Canada Council, you need to be vetted first, and that vetting process can take you around 1 month to actually do it. So you have to always start early when you're applying for any of these sorts of grants through all these agencies. Okay, now where do you find information? So again, we just do things that we do. We ask our friends, we join a club or an arts organization, we take a class, we use the resources at the library, we use the internet. YouTube has videos that teach everything. We discover what we need and what we want. And remember, through this process, as we're collecting information, we are mostly going to do it yourself. Okay, so now when I'm looking at information from the web on, you know, they always have these 10 tips on how to write a grant and the processes. And these are just a couple of them, which kind of are very similar. So this one just says, determine why you require funding. The second point is you have to ensure that you're eligible for what you're applying for. The third point here is you rally community and legitimate support. So in this case, you might have to get some letters from people or stuff like that, or tell a lot of your friends and a lot of groups that you're dealing with that you're looking for money and looking for granting opportunities. You research the funding body and previous grant recipients, because that can tell you if you're on the same level of these people, are you likely to achieve something? You should be proactive about grants. Set realistic goals and ideas for your application. A good budget always helps. Write the proposal with life and passion. Revise again, and revise with friends. Get people to read your application who might not know what you do, and submit ahead of time. Or as another person wrote, is you determine your requirements. You ensure acceptability. Make use of cordial connections. So talk to people in your community about what grants are available. They might have suggestions for you. You review the previous grant recipients. You get trained professionally. This was kind of if somebody actually wants to write grants professionally for other people. You keep it organized. Set realistic goals for yourself. Make it budget friendly. Put yourself in the shoes of the financier. So in other words, you have to think, what is the granting agency going to think? Is this something that they could really sort of get their heads around and fund? And they say, mention your strengths, not your weaknesses. Okay, so where do we get knowledge from? Well, the places were, like Calgary Arts Development, or Alberta Foundation for the Arts. We can also get it from CARFAC Alberta, places like Akimbo, the Edmonton Arts Council. Now, we're just going to go through briefly a few kind of tips to write a grant. Okay, so we're going to discuss a few tips, tricks, and a discussion on writing a winning grant proposal. So the two tips that we're going to really do tonight, we're going to deal with things called clarity and honesty. And clarity, you can learn from others. Honesty, you learn on your own. So I can help you with clarity. I can, CARFAC often reads like the AFA or Cada. We often read early drafts of grants or something like that, and we can tell people, do we understand it? Are you being clear? Are you being concise? Can we really understand what you can do? So what is clarity? It's about, does your proposal make sense? Do the figures, the numbers in your budget really add up? And have you answered the questions the reader has? And this is a reader like me who can read grants, and that's who, what, when, where, why, and how. If you've answered those questions, you've probably put together something that's somewhat clear because you've answered the questions that I have as a reader. This is just a page from another granting agency, and that's probably not applicable to some of you here. This is from the Edmonton Arts Council. Stephen Williams suggests that this is a kind of thing that some people use for their first paragraph. And this is a real boring way of doing it, but it kind of gets the point across on what we're doing. So it says, my name is, I am some sort of artist, and I have been practicing for this amount of time. With this application, I am requesting this many dollars from, and then you put the granting agency. The intent is to do this particular thing over the course of this particular time. The bulk of the grant will go to these types of expenses with the ultimate goal of moving forward in this direction. So in this one paragraph, we've actually described the who, what, when, where, how, and why. We've described all those things. I mean, this isn't probably beautiful or amazing writing, but it gets across the answer of who, what, when, where, how, and why, which is really important that we have. Okay, as someone who has been on juries, too many grant applications fail to provide an adequate introduction of who is applying. So I want to know who you are and what do you want to do? You have to be really clear on these sorts of things. So when I'm reading, I don't want to go to page 3 of the things to try to figure out what you're going to do and where are you going to do it? And we probably have to answer, and this sometimes is in an artist statement or your CV. Where did you come from? I want to know a bit about who you are as a person and as an artist. How are you going to do what you propose? I also want to know, why do you want to do it? And without this kind of information, the reader is left very confused. So some things that I suggest is have a couple of people read your proposal. Does it make sense to them? Can they understand what you're proposing? Does the proposal address what is asked in the guidelines for the grant? That's one of the most important things. Does it address what is in the grant application? Okay, so other people on the web use this word clarity to mean clarity, concise, and compelling. So the 3 C's. So clarity, you have to write a grant, you have to be clear. You have to be concise. Answer questions directly and include all specific information requested. Compelling, and this is the storytelling that Taylor was probably talking about and things like that. The proposal should be written in a manner that makes the reviewer want to move forward with your idea. You're trying to convince somebody. So clarity, concise, and compelling. Now, as I said, read the guidelines at least twice. Make sure you understand them. If you don't, then you reach out to either the organizations or an individual that can help you understand what they're asking for. Remember, grants are for the future. They're for 2 to 6 months ahead. So always have a plan B in mind in case you don't achieve it. Okay. And remember to start early. Start in the spring for a grant that is due in the fall. Leave yourself time to write and rewrite. Leave yourself time to have others read what you have written. And as you rewrite, as you revise this thing, you really begin to understand more about yourself and more about your art practice. You begin to clarify your own thoughts and why you make art. And honesty is the next one. This is kind of, you're an artist, and CARFAC kind of teaches you to advocate for yourself and to tell your story yourself. That's something very important that you can do. Honesty is your voice, your thoughts. It's all about you. As you know yourself best, a winning grant proposal is written by you. And just think about it as you do you. Honesty involves being aware of who you are, what you want and need, and even being aware of where you are in your art career. And the thing is, you have to be aware, that's why we say you should check who won and who achieved some grants in the past, because you have to know if you're even in the same league as the people who win major art prizes or something like that. So you have to be very, very, very much self-aware to know if you're even eligible, and to know if you're likely to actually achieve what you're applying for. Okay, so to be honest, you have to do research. Be aware of what a grant or opportunity is for. And not every opportunity is suited for everybody. So think about who is the intended audience for an opportunity. And ask yourself if you're a good fit before you apply. Because applying takes a lot of time. So really think about that. Always remember to answer the who, what, where, when, why, and how. Those are so vitally important for any sort of time that you're thinking of applying for any kind of grant. And benefits of writing grant, like Kari said, it's not money. It's about, just think of a grant as getting a job, another job. The money is for completing that job. It's not a gift, it's a job. Okay? And benefits of writing a grant, it gives you the time to actually do a project that you really believe in. And a benefit of writing a grant is to make things happen. And always have a plan. If you fail to plan, then you plan on failing. So always answer those W5 questions and how, and always do your homework. And that's pretty well what I have to share with you tonight. And I just want to Thank you for this. And it looks like we're going to take a break now. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes, actually, that's right. Wait, gotta get this button. Here we go. Hi. Yes, we're going to take a 5-minute break now. And so while we're on this break, please do go to the chat, fill out the feedback form, and then we'll come back and we'll open up everything for a discussion. So enjoy your break. Thank you. Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hello, Margot.
Hi, Karen. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
That's awesome. Okay. So let's see. We've got 5 minutes. And then what do we have for questions?
We've got a few. We've got a few.
You're still recording.
Yep. Oh. Oh.
Well, I can shut it off if you'd like.
I think we usually do.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I can do that now.